This diagram is where it all started for me. This is one of the first diagrams that I created in 2024. It was actually on this date. I went ahead, and I can't get too deep into this because the last time I tried to explain this diagram, they blocked that video. But I took this particular saying right here and decoded it down, and I just created like a flow chart. This was like one of the first diagrams that I ever created, and I had no idea how any of this was going to play out. But every column, every box, every part of this, I have deconstructed in various diagrams. And you can go through all of the work that I have on this page. If you take this chart, I have an expansion on each of these ideas. From this, I have diagrams on all of this that explains everything here, okay? And I went through this process of doing this unbeknownst to me. I was just decoding as the light information was coming, but I didn't know that this was basically my outline, okay? And everything that I did, or all the diagrams that I did, can be traced here. The last portion of this that I didn't have was here, okay, in this particular part, which talks about the Gemini, the twins, the Virgo. So I had to get into the zodiac, which I did like recently, a couple of diagrams that kind of outlay the zodiac and how that ties into the twin flame story, decoding that, as well as the proper time calendar with the intercalary days as mentioned in the book of Enoch, which is like 1, 3, 4, and 6, I believe. And I did an entire mapping of that so I can have a full understanding. And then I had to get this final piece because I am a Virgo, okay? And there is this fish, okay, on the end of that Virgo, which is this particular story here that came to me from a Pisces, okay? And I didn't understand initially what it was all about, but then when that person told me, like Logan told me that she was a Pisces, I said, oh, it makes perfect sense, because here I am decoding this last couple weeks, these zodiacs, and how that all ties into this storyline and how that kind of loops into these two particular beings. And these are their signs, okay? And how that fish was going to come into play. And it came into play through a dream that ties into the space-time continuum. Now, this dream has the main components of silver, and I like to look at dreams as numerical patterns. Like I mentioned in another video, a lot of times our dreams are number sequences, okay? And if you want to really decode a dream, you need to look at the components of the dream and everything that you saw and break that down into numerical sequences. Or if you see something like silver, like a silver spaceship, she said, then you would look at the atomic information for silver and the numbers surrounding silver, and that will help you glean a larger picture in terms of what your dream was about. But I am a master dream decoder, okay? So when it comes to this stuff, I can dive in deep. And plus, because I have Christ consciousness, I have extreme gifts when it comes to this stuff. My psychic abilities are off the charts. I can be reading something and I'll hear a song or something drop into my consciousness, and I am so trained and in tune with my mind that it will lead me down a trail to get the proper information and to get the truth. But when I'm looking at dreams, I have a very, very, very good understanding of the framework of how they work. There is nothing happenstance in the dream sequence. It's basically your brain laying out a number sequence so it can help you solve a problem. Like, as I said in other videos, sometimes the dreams are projections, which are your brain telling you, hey, you have this chemical imbalance, and I need to show you what that is so you can fix it, so I can stop feeling this extreme emotion, or whether it's sadness or whatever, and so you can fix that chemical imbalance. So your dreams will project a scene before you that will show you a parable, or in parable form, how to fix your timeline numerically, or how to fix your life so that you can stop experiencing that extreme emotion. But there's also the projection, but there's injection as well, because this is the light realm. We're talking about quantum realities, and we're talking about the fact that when you dream, you go into light form. Basically, you shrink, your light shrinks because it's no longer being observed, your eyes are closed, and you go into light form. So you are also able to be injected into the dream space, meaning that if there's an overarching problem that needs to be solved, there's a lot of us who receive prophecy in dreams, meaning that it's a future event or something that's going to happen on a larger level. So it's like a larger problem solving in the numerical sequence. And that can only happen with certain people who have these abilities, who can receive dreams on that level that are interpreted in this way. So her dream was not a small dream. This was a very massive part of the storyline. So what I did was I took every part of her dream and broke it down. She said a silver spaceship, so I looked into silver and broke that down. And then, what is the silver? What does silver represent in the 196 Olympian spirits? And it gave me 4 and 7 for the AG silver. What I like to do is break down everything in terms of the letters and numbers, because I know they hold significance and meaning, and they're all created because they mean something deeper. So I looked at Silver's numbers. You have AG, and AG equals 8, which is the time loop. Anytime you see 8, you're talking about the loop of time, okay? And I looked at the 4th and 7th day on the 196 Olympian spirits, because you have the number 4 and 7 here. You know, we have a 47th president right now, and the name is Trump, and Trump is trumpets. Okay, so we're looking at how everything connects from a biblical to a world stage to a numerical to a scientific level. Yes, I skirt across everything to get the truth. Okay, and then I looked at okay, well, which planets is Mercury and Saturn, since it's the 4th day and the 7th day, and the 4th day governs Mercury and the 7th day governs Saturn. But not only does the 4th day govern Mercury, it also governs Gemini and Virgo, which I explained in my other video, that these are the 2 main twin flame energies, which is in another diagram that I created. So you also have 7, which is Saturn, and Saturn is a Sabbath or Saturday, and that is a representation of resting from works, or when this particular event happens, it's going to be a Sabbath rest for everyone, meaning that everything will shut down and we will go into that period of Sabbath rest because Saturn is involved. Okay, so you have Mercury as the first planet, and in Enoch's intercalary gate, which I decoded in another diagram, this is the month of December, or the 10th month, okay? And then you have Pluto, which is plutonium, which is a part of that particular gate that I decoded, and that number is 73 and 4, okay, for plutonium. And if you know anything about plutonium, you'll know that Pluto is also Pluto return, which is an astrology terminology. A lot of people have talked about how America is in its Pluto return. They didn't know how judgment was supposed to come, but this is how it's supposed to come. And if you think about judgment, when I say the 6th, when I talk about the 6th day here, that is also including Libra, okay, which is the scales of judgment. So the 6th planet is Saturn, but it's also 6 is also representative of the 6th day, which is Friday, which includes Libra, which is judgment. Okay, so this brought me to these numbers, and I worked out the formula that totally equals it equals 47 when you add all these numbers together, but it also equals 2 for the twins. And anytime you see this, you know that you're talking about the polarity of Gemini, which, as I said in another video, Gemini and Virgo are created because Virgo is the genie in the bottle of the Gemini, okay? And if you remove the M from the Gemini, you get genie, all right? If you take the symbol for Gemini and you take those lines, you can really reform those lines to create an M, okay? The 2 lines at the top, and the bottom, and the 2 lines in the center. If you break them apart, you can create an M. So Gemini and Virgo are the twin flame energies in the zodiac. They're the main twin flame energies. It's not to say that no one else is a twin flame with other signs. They are the ones that encapsulate that. And she herself is a representation of the divine feminine, or Venus, okay? Which makes sense, is why we have the 6th planet here, because 6 is the number of Venus, which is actually 15. It's Inanna Ishtar, which is Venus, and her number is 15. 15 also represents the twin flames, which is the yin and yang energy, okay? So one of the numbers that I got out of this, when you're looking at the Neptune gate, which is 573, is 375. Okay, I was able to pull that out, but I was also able to get that number from the 2 main birthdays of the 2 characters. Okay, the 2 main characters, the 2 twin flames that this is all about. Trust me, I have the math on who it is and who they are. I know, because this is a part of my own personal story. Do with that what you will. Okay, but this is their mathematics. This is their actual birthdays, and I did the reductions for it, and it came out to be this math. So that kind of ties in here, and I wanted to see like what numbers or zip codes is tied to 375. And Ohio stood out to me because they have this 375 Ohio House bill, and it's pretty much about land ownership. But when we're talking in a decoding sense, nothing is by appearance is what you think it is. Everything is tied to something much deeper. So we're talking about these 2 people, how they are the heirs basically within the bloodlines that are hidden, okay, or these royal bloodlines that are hidden, particularly this 13th Christ bloodline. And the Christ bloodline basically means that they are from Sirius, okay, which is a star mapping, specific star mapping that comes from the Midwest area of the United States, okay? It's like X marks the spot, or that point of convergence where you had those 2 eclipses and it formed an X over the Tennessee area and that whole Midwest area. That is the area that was occupied, or that you can say is ancient Mesopotamia. We can get into some Tartaria stuff, but when you talk about the ancient Sumerians, this was the land, okay? And this was the place of convergence. This was the place that was the center of the realm. That's why the eclipse crosses the X, and X marks the spot where you have the Syrians, okay? And these are the light beings that are the original light beings. And as I did in my outline for the Abacus audit, those people were driven out of the Midwest down into the southern states so that other things could be carried out ritually, which is slavery. You had breeding that was going on, which was more so for the genetic extraction. Okay, it was not so much about no dang on cotton. All right, this was about genetic extraction. It was about proximity to certain places so that they had easy access to take you into an island, because there's a big huge difference between the laws of the land and maritime law. Okay, so they had to be in the U.S. portion of the U.S., which was divided up into the midpoint, the U.S. point, which is where you have your D.C., Maryland area, and you have California. So there was 3 parts of this land that was divided up, with the main castle or center portion being the Midwest. When they say look left, you look right. So this is the formula, and the 3 in this sense is the triangle itself. So when you think about the triangle, you're going to think about it having 3 sides, but you're talking about the actual formation of a being. Okay, so the 3 represents you and all your parts. This is the death, life, and rebirth. This is the Christ resurrection. This is the 3 points of life, and then you live, and you're reborn. You go through your lifespan, and then you pass away, and then you go back through the moon machine, which is the center point. But there's also another, because you're constantly doing this loop when you're going through life. There's also another point where you meet your other half, or you're supposed to. Okay, and what I found is that what's used is the Euler's method, basically, to change the trajectory of this math. And it's all about a math equation. This was presented in Hidden Figures, the film, where they talked about the go no go point or whatever of re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. But it's really a mathematical formula that creates a separation between these energies. And if you can use that math, which is the bad math on the world stage, then you can keep these 2 people and every other person from ever crossing paths as they're going through the 7 part. Okay, so the 7 in the equation is the half of the triangle. This is like representing a part in your life where you're supposed to cross paths with your twin energy. Okay, and what that means is the 3 and the 5 in the equation are the time loop. Okay, so here you are, here they are, and you're coming this way, he's coming that way, right? And you're supposed to have an equal 7 arc that matches each other, and the math has to math this way in order for you to meet at the midpoint, which is December 25th, or around Christmas. All right, and the reason why you have a tree is because, yeah, there's a triangle there, and then you put square presents under the tree, which I can get into, because it's all about the square mathematics and not the circular mathematics. Okay, everything is taking you away from the 360-degree experience. So instead of it being a circular experience where there's 360 degrees here and the duality is maintained because you have a circle that kind of keeps both masculine and feminine polarities in the separation of who they actually are, what they're using is a square. Okay, and the square goes into the Star of David. Okay, and we could get into that, which is basically when you have the Star of David, it's 2 triangles. You take a square, you slice that square in half, and basically those 2 squares would then merge together to form the Star of David. And that is the Star of David, and that is not true congruency. Okay, when you form it from a square, those are diamonds, or those are the inversion triangles, or a triangle within a triangle. That is actually a square is 2 L's, which is 2 masculine shapes, is 2 men. Okay, and what they are doing is merging the 2 as the Star of David to create 2 triangles that overlap. However, they are not congruent, because congruence must involve the full circle. It cannot be within a square. It has to have 360 degrees in order for everything to work properly. So this is the 8 loop. And again, you have to have that 7 energy together. When you do your birthday your birthday math, you have to have that 7 math together, because that is the slip knot, or that's the number or the math that will help you to escape the loop and stop missing each other. All right, and when you do the math for these 2 particular people that I'm talking about, their birthdays equal together 888. Okay, and they're all about that loop, baby. They're all about that loop and that loot. They could care less about love. It's not about love. It's about keeping you in a loop. And a big part of why I did the big book of life and death versus the little book of death is to show you how the mathematics of the sequence of 369 plays out versus the math that they want you to have, which is the loop math of 8. Because in that particular book, the numbers open up as 741. Okay, and that's a crossroads, which is the number 4, which is a representation of the intersex being. Then you have the 7 on the beginning, which is supposed to be in the center. Okay, and the 7 and the 1 connect, just like I connected the 3 and the 5 here to create the loop. The 7 and the 1 connect to create the loop. However, in the center, you have a 4, which is the crossroads, which diminishes the judgment. Basically, it takes away the judgment. So instead of you having twin flames, you can pretty much anybody can be together in that particular equation because you have more choices. It's not polarity, it becomes a quad, which is 4, okay, which is 2 L's, okay. All of this leads back to a lot of the lyrics, like 7 twice is LL. Sneak out and meet me, bring a box of L's. We can go into this all day, okay? But this is basically what we're talking about here. And this is the equation for the twin flame math, which I did a mapping of how or what date would be the midpoint. And it's basically like a 20-month separation that leads to the number 11 or the duality, which would bring you around the time of Christmas. So this is the actual date for real true love to me, okay? It's coming from the fall, not the dead of winter, which is Valentine's Day. If December is dec, it means it's the 10th month, okay? And 10/25 is 3/5, okay, which is 3/5 here, all right? And what they have done is they've moved the date of love to February 14th, okay? And February is actually the 12th month, all right? So that would mean that 12/14 is actually 3/5. So again, they have the 3/5 here, but they've moved it into the dead of winter. And on a ritual level, on a light moving level, on a controlling this through the craft or the alteration of source code, meaning that they had to separate it, they put it in the dead of winter. And that means it's cold. That means it's frozen. That means hearts are cold. Okay. That means love is stuck and stagnant. Okay. Everything is about being frozen, even down to the time, even down to on an earth level, freezing certain coordinates has to be done in order to carry out these rituals on a massive scale. Okay. So this is the formula, and I was able to calculate basically a midpoint date, and that brought you to Christmas, and that explains a lot of the reason why Christmas is the way that it is celebrating a different type of love. Not to say there's anything wrong with familial love and gift giving, but that's not what it's supposed to be. The Valentine's Day is actually the false love date, and this particular holiday, which is Christmas, is supposed to be the real love date, or the time by which most flames intersect at this meet point, okay, which is, you could say this is the black hole, or this x-axis, basically where they meet on the plane.